Hello, ideaXme listeners. I'm Maeve Millwood, ideaXme's fashion ambassador. Today I'm going to be speaking to Matthew Drinkwater. Matthew works at the crossroads of fashion, retail, and technology, heading up London College of Fashion's innovation agency. Matthew and his team work in immersive technologies, building new pathways for a truly digitalised world. Matthew has been called by drapers a fashion tech trailblazer, changing the course of retail. Who are you?
I'm the head of the innovation agency at London College of Fashion, and I guess in a nutshell what that means is that the college has given myself and the team a remit to go and explore emerging technologies and how they impact on the fashion industry. So specifically, we look at any emerging technology that changes the way that designers either make their collections, so that could be smart materials or smart processes, change the way they show their collection. So we do a lot of activity at London Fashion Week, which is a great testing bed for particularly immersive technologies like augmented mixed reality and virtual reality. And then ultimately how they use technology to change the way that they sell their collection. So it's kind of like looking at the very traditional designer business model, creating a case study with new technology, showing that to the industry of how you can make a difference.
Brilliant. And you started in the fashion industry exclusively. How did you come to end up working with tech as well?
So I think that's just a personal interest and something that I've always been fortunate enough to manage to blend with what I've been doing in my career. So yeah, as a sad gamer, I spend far too much time on my console. But it's always driven kind of an interest in innovation and how we might be able to use technology, particularly in my early retail days, how to use technologies to change consumer behavior. So whether that was online, we were experimenting with shoppable video over 10 years ago now, and looking at things like scent marketing and how scents could change consumer flow through a retail environment, what we could use to begin to track that behavior. So all of those things I was able to do. It facilitated just more of an interest of how you could begin to create new business models, new interactions, new experiences, which I've always been fortunate enough to be able to make come to life.
Amazing. And you also spent some time in Japan in the beginning of your career. Did you find the technology over there in the 90s influenced what you're doing now? Or at least sparked it?
Yeah, it was a really good place just to look at where technology can make a difference. And not just Japan, but being in that region specifically, I think, shows you a different way of working. So, yeah, it was an amazing place to spark creativity. Has formed a big chunk of my working life.
Going back to what your agency is doing now, you've worked on projects with Disney that Forbes described as the first truly beautiful wearable tech. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, that was back in 2014, working alongside a really talented designer called Richard Nicoll, who sadly passed away a few years ago. We'd had a lot of our early work was focused on wearable technology, and the challenges of integrating electronics into garments is well documented and it's extraordinarily difficult. But we felt there was an opportunity to create something that aesthetically was pleasing. I think some of the ideas around wearable technology simply focus on function, and that is absolutely what embedding electronics into a garment essentially does. It creates a layer of functionality that allows you to say, well, what does your sweatshirt do? Which is a weird kind of question to ask. So I think in those early discussions with Richard, he really wanted to create something that allowed him to express his creativity in a different way. And so we were able to bring in a number of partners in that to help us create a fibre optic dress. Based on just a very slip dress design that Richard had seen a lot of imagery around Kate Moss and some beautiful slip dresses, and it effectively was using an older technology. So fibre optic was not new at the time and doesn't remain new. I still see it a lot out there being touted as new, but it's something that we wanted to begin to create that moment of desirability, kind of build an emotional connection to the garment. So yeah, it was just one very highly powered LED that created just this incredible silhouette. And yeah, the moment it went down the catwalk at Fashion Week in, I think, September 2014 was quite extraordinary. I mean, there's a lot of gasping at Fashion Week in general, but that moment was one I remember standing. I was at the one end of the catwalk, and as the model went onto the catwalk, just seeing mobile devices going up, and it felt like a really big moment for where technology can genuinely intersect with fashion. It's what can it do to elevate that rather than simply being placed onto the catwalk.
So you saw that as a much more realistic direction that wearable tech may go in?
Yeah, I mean, I think fibre optic dresses is going to remain a fairly niche area. But I'm not sure that that's a main draw, but I think probably the main learning point from that is that you can't just take technology and place it onto the catwalk. You know, there are lots of examples of simply attaching technology. It's how do you, and particularly in that case, you know, a group of really talented creative technologists coming together with a fashion designer, with a university to begin to build something. That co-creation mentality is what allowed us to build something really special.
Amazing. And then going back to work more recently, you did an incubator with Microsoft last year. How did that work out?
Yeah, it was, I think, is an important moment for fashion education, because one of those areas where, you know, if you want a new generation to come out and have the skill set required to build new experiences, they have to be exposed to technology. And when we first started work here over 6 years ago, that gap felt really, really large. And so we've made a really concerted effort to try and bring the technology industry much closer to our own. And the incubator was a really nice iteration of that. And we're running a second one currently, which will be finished in the next couple of months or so.
Amazing. So obviously tech brings a lot of opportunities to fashion in terms of making it more accessible for burgeoning designers. Do you see any downsides to the increase in tech in fashion, especially in terms of like a possibly slimming down workforce and things like that?
No, I genuinely don't. I think it's a reflection of where society is at. Like the fact that any industry can feel like it's separate from technology. Technology is embedded in everything that we do. How we're communicating now is an evolution of a particular form of technology. So to imagine that it sits aside from what you do on a day-to-day basis, it is what traditionally the industry has done. I think it is something that is enabling entirely new ways of making. You know, I think all of those areas that we work in is how you can create through technology. What can you do to elevate that process at the moment? How can you showcase differently? And how can you retail differently? You could build a business entirely differently from the way that a lot of young designers, even 5 years ago, were beginning to think about what a fashion business would look like. And if it allows them to get off that conveyor belt and start doing things in a different way, but I think we're doing, at the sort of luxury designer end, a very big service to the industry. On a more generic sort of fast fashion, wider industry level, I think it is going to change the way that we consume product. I think, you know, there is far too much discounting on the high street, and that is based on an industry which is simply guessing how much it might sell year to year. There is a smarter way to do that. And the advancement of robotics into supply chain is going to allow for production much closer to market, for retailers to understand their consumers so much better that they'll be able to produce what consumers want when they need it, price that they're prepared to pay for it that feels right, rather than just piling stuff up that they then consequently have to discount. And, you know, we're all consuming too much. That's something which has to change. So new ways of making and retailing are utterly vital to the future of the industry.
Amazing.
And the entire planet.
Yeah.
So
you've kind of come on to my next question anyway. With sustainability, can you see tech having a big influence in helping that movement?
Yeah, I mean, completely. From those very obvious high street models where we're simply consuming too much, I think a more intelligent fast fashion model is inevitable. And fast fashion isn't necessarily bad for the environment. It's just the way in which it is currently produced.
Yeah.
Is incredibly damaging. So I think we need to figure that new way out. But also the methods and the way in which we create. We do a lot of work in 3D, and getting designers and brands to virtually prototype would be a huge positive thing for the industry to adopt. It would cut out so much wastage in the supply chain. And then just the very prospect of more futuristic ways for designers, for consumers to try on product and consume product is beginning to become realised.
Amazing. And are there any retailers or designers out there at the moment who you feel are doing something really interesting in that field?
I think there's a lot of growing interest, and even from the more traditional luxury houses, those things I would say have changed dramatically in a couple of years. There needs to be a great deal more, and I think there's a massive leadership issue within traditional fashion and retail. But one or two, the big houses, LVMH and Kering, are beginning to realise that kind of adopting a more open innovation stance is going to allow their brands to be more profitable in the long term. And that kind of adoption is only naturally going to filter through into the more established high street brands who are struggling at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of from your work with the agency, but also generally in your life, would you say there's a person that you'd like to meet, and would you know what you'd like to ask them?
That's a really tough question. Well, I think there are lots of people it's been a remarkable year. We've been able to take our work through to the likes of House of Lords and Buckingham Palace, and just last week Downing Street, which felt like a big deal. I think beyond that, culturally, there's people that you want to intersect with from different parts of the economy. I think, we've done a lot of work with the film industry over the last couple of years, and you think of kind of iconic people within the film industry, the Spielbergs and all of those who were working on technologies which are going to impact what we're doing. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pick out one individual. I think we feel so incredibly lucky to have whoever you say you end up going to work with. So that's the things that I think. What I want to say is that the fashion industry needs to be much more open about where they see the possibility to collaborate and move forward with, and whoever that might be, from whatever stage of their career might be. I think let's be more open to the kind of voices that we could be listening to.
Amazing. And then have you found there's anyone that you've connected with in your life who has influenced you in a positive way, or vice versa? Anyone that you've mentored or you've seen grow as a person in their career?
I think, we've been really lucky to work with a huge number of young startups, and just being able to make some kind of impact with them is really inspirational. But to see them go off and deliver their own thing and just move forward is really valuable. I mean, we've worked with a lot of designers in the past, and to see them grow their businesses into really sustainable, powerful. I think of the likes of Phoebe English, who's growing an incredible young business, of Craig Green, Marcus Almeida. Those are businesses who you just look at and go, wow, look what you guys have gone and done. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to pick out too many individuals, but I think there isn't anyone that you don't look at as going out and simply doing and following their aspirations, and not just talking about it, but doing it. But those are the people that kind of make you smile.
Brilliant. And is there anything that the Innovation Agency is working on this year that you think is particularly exciting that you can share with us?
Yeah, it's every year you kind of get to the start of the year and think, last year was good. How do we how do we keep pushing down that road? Yeah, that every year there's kind of a pinch me moment of who we're able to work with and the kind of projects we're able to deliver. All I can say is that I think at this point next year we'll be able to say the same thing as last year. I think the increase of virtual prototyping, of kind of virtual experiences within fashion, is only going to get bigger and more accepted. So I would like to think that 12 months from now there'll be a number of projects where we will have been able to demonstrate that. So yeah, watch this space.
Amazing. And kind of finally, 10 years from now, what are the key things you think we'll see differently when we're going out as consumers to purchase in the fashion industry?
Yeah, I think 10 years from now, you're going to see a much more personalised experience. I think all of those things of being able to look at a more bespoke, on-demand, which, you know, I don't want to portray that as futuristic. That's how we used to consume fashion. Yeah. If we could use technology to get us back to that point, that would be good. But I think on a more overarching kind of technological viewpoint of where 10 years will be from now, there will be a digital layer to everything around us. And the way that we access that could be through a mobile device, could be through a pair of head-worn glasses, but that is the technology path that we will see. So the AR cloud will be all around us, and I think that will allow us to create really extraordinary moments through immersive experiences. So I would like to think that for fashion 10 years from now, we'll start seeing kind of experiences that maybe right now a lot of people couldn't possibly imagine. And I think that is going to be possible within that timeline.
Amazing.
Which should allow for, you know, a lot more exciting retail experience, a lot more exciting way that you consume a fashion show, the way that fashion is brought into your home and explored and interacted with in retail environments will be entirely different.
And do you think the industry is aware of the shake-up to come? They're all kind of gearing up towards it now.
Gearing up towards it? No, not enough. I think this is where, particularly universities and what we do, remains really important, is to raise awareness, to begin to get brands moving in that way. There will, of course, be people who do see that opportunity, but I think that shift in, I get traditional retail from the sort of brands that you would have looked at leading in the past will change a lot. I think you'll see entirely new brands within that 10-year time frame. If you were to look back 10 years ago, some of those technology companies that we're very familiar with today were in their infancy. Yes. And I think you'll see another similar shift in that time frame.
Amazing. And last but not least, where can our listeners learn more about LCF's Innovation Agency and the work that you guys do?
Yeah, so have a look at our website. All of our new projects go up on there. That's fialondon.com. Also, social media is a very good place to follow us. On Instagram, we are at Fashion Innovation Agency, and on Twitter, we are at FIA London.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time, Matthew. It's been really enlightening.
My pleasure. It was great to talk to you.